and be like, yeah, we're well above the pay for itself mark. But we could have a whole season of this and still hit that 10%, we could have above 10% success rate. So, how do I get past this weather, this storm, in order to come for that? And so iteration is great, but those arrows are costly. And so when we're talking about what we can do to provide maybe a little more focus for that iteration, any kind of tool that we can come up with, any kind of paradigm or something that provides some guidance there is going to be really useful to us. And the big question for me is, why would we be comfortable with just iterating alone? Why would I bet the farm, my family's comfort on that? And there's lots and lots and lots of indie studios that are out there doing just that. And they hit the break-even mark, and they're like, yeah, we're going to make it. But they still got, they got this coming up. And so even with big studios, we see it, where, Zynga and Kabam and even Kixeye, all these different studios, a lot of us hit it in first to market when mobile became really like a big thing. But a lot of those games that are at the top of the charts are still the games that were on the top of the charts if you look back like 3 years ago. Candy Crush is still on there, Game of War is still on there. So if theme is not enough, I wouldn't bet the whole farm on that, and that's where I'm at iteration, but theme is important, and especially comes into play when you're talking about marketing, or the cost per install, the cost of acquiring a user. For Game of War and stuff like that, if you go to try to buy, ads on Facebook to try to drive users to your game, players to your game, they might be looking at a whole bunch of different RPG or fantasy, other similar fantasy strategy games. And so the kind of theme that you have can really differentiate you or put you in that same bucket, and you have to be competing against games like Game of War and like marketing spend. The other thing is that theme can be part of the fun itself. I'll go more into that later. But even bigger, the other bigger thing is that other companies, even when they're doing marketing and stuff, they aren't just iterating on marketing. On the marketing side, they have lots of tools. They have consumer studies. They're using, all the different KPIs. They're doing market research. They have analytics. They know what kind of works. It's almost kind of funny because we almost have more tools now to help us with getting players to spend in games than we actually have for making fun and engaging games, which maybe could be kind of telling free-to-play in general. So theme is important, but it's not the whole picture. And so here's theme. Theme is what I have as the top of my fundamental pyramid. And as we kind of go, I'm going to kind of build it out for you guys. So my first point is that our current tools and methodologies for designing fun and engaging games is disturbingly lacking. I think there's a lot more that we could be doing there. For the second point, I want to kind of go through, and I'm going to talk through and build out the rest of the pyramid, but I want to kind of explain some things first. And one of the first things I want to go into is the concept of flow. Some ideas out there is that what fun is just finding a challenge that is matched to the player's skill. And how many people here are already familiar with the concept of flow? I expected that a wide number of you guys would be. So flow, it's kind of that state, and the white doesn't show up here very well, but flow it's that fun state, right, where you're playing and you lose track of time. You get sucked into a game of StarCraft or whatever, and then you look up and you realize everyone's asleep and has been asleep for hours, and oh my God, you got class at, in 30 hours or something. That's the flow state. And a lot of people posit that, getting into that flow state, what makes a game fun that gets you in that state is that balance of challenge versus skill. If you have too much challenge, you're going to have anxiety. It's going to be really frustrating. You're going to flip the table and rage quit. If you have, more skill, you're going to get bored. So even chores, when they're matched with the skill, they can be fun. I have 3 children, and I have all kinds of, my son constantly is like, Dad, can I dust? And we're like, yeah, dude, knock yourself out. Give him a little duster. He runs around. He's got to dust everything. Dusting's fun because that's where his skill level's at. But I remember all of my childhood, I hated dusting. Once your skill set gets beyond that, it's frustrating. So it kind of ties into what I'm going to bring in as the next level, but you need mechanics to keep up that challenge, keep challenge matched with the skill by itself. But I want to stick to flow and I'll get back to more mechanics. So Theme is really important, good mechanics are important, but flow is also important because you can get a very difficult game or a very difficult challenge. And at Here Interactive, we find that just the difficulty could maybe affect our rating that users would give our game, which was very important and drove, like, if we got front page or won contests, or the kind of attention our game got. That difficulty, keeping people in that, or I should say that difficulty, if it's not matched, would affect our rating much more and can kill your whole game. And we found that keeping it more on the easier side was much better than making a game that was too hard. You just could not risk making a game that's too hard because people would get pissed and they would take it off. They would take it out on you. And many games you'd have like the best graphics, and people would be like, they'd leave comments, below the game, and it'd be like, great visuals, love the characters, too hard, 1 out of 5, and they're not fair at all. But difficulty, it really matters. So we need a way to ensure that skill stays match the challenge, and I call those things flow controllers. The most common flow controller is difficulty settings in a game. You can play easy, medium, or hard. The problem with that as a flow controller is that, one, who wants to play easy? Especially when you have difficulty settings that, like, you want to be a noob, or, it's like, I want to go on the kiddie, a training wheels difficulty. Yeah, that doesn't feel fun. The second thing is, I could guess wrong. Like, I could be like, I'm a badass, I'm going to do it on hard, and I go in there and just get destroyed. Which would happen frequently, and then the rest of my game is just me getting rocked. So there's a lot of problems with that. There's some good ideas out there. People have done a lot of experiments with that. One of the most notable ones, or one that I really enjoy, is the actual game flow, which is based on Genova Chen's thesis on, or his kind of development on the whole concept of flow in that chart I showed you, of trying to make a game keep players in that flow state. And how it does it is by you can go deeper or go shallower, but you can basically run away from monsters that are trying to eat you. And so, as you're doing that, just to kind of elaborate on that, by doing that, in a very subconscious way, the player can always attune to difficulty. If they think they're up to the challenge, they can go and fight those big monsters, even if they're really small. But even if they're a really strong, big guy, if they come up to a challenge they think is too strong, they can just run. And so they're always making the subconscious choice in a way that's very natural to the game. It feels very natural of whether that skill, whether their skill is up to the challenge. And so I think there's a lot better ways than just difficulty alone. So we need good game mechanics to keep players in the flow state. But the key thing to remember, though, is you couldn't have flow controllers without game mechanics. You can have difficulty settings without game mechanics for them to actually act upon. So game mechanics are critical, but again, they don't dictate success by themselves. One example is Pokemon Go. I'm trying to remember the game that's actually based off of Ingress, thank you. Yes, it's on the tip of my tongue. Ingress, almost exactly the same, but when they added the theme of Pokemon, which was the perfect fit for that kind of game, it exploded, whereas Ingress did not explode by itself, that level of success. But the other thing is that it's difficult to come up with new mechanics. So a lot of games, what they do is they just use mechanics and they use flow controllers that already exist in other games and just swap out that theme layer. One of the problems with that, though, is we talked about theme and we talked about trying to stand out from the crowd with marketing spend and cost per install, is that your game looks just exactly like everyone else's game when you do it. So a lot of people reject a lot of games that look like Clash of Clans, where it's that city builder and you can go and then attack other people's bases. There's lots of clones of that. And a lot of people are, they look at those pictures, screenshots of those games, and they're like, I've played this a million times. I don't want to spend it and invest in it. If I wanted to play this, I would just go play Clash of Clans where I have a level 70 account. So having a good theme can really help you differentiate. So that brings me to where we're at now, which is our fundamental pyramid. We've got game mechanics as our foundation right now. Our flow controllers act upon that. And then the theme is how we present to the player. All right. Let's talk talk about a minute, before we get to the final layer of the pyramid, I want to talk about one more thing, and that's motivational drivers. Has anyone heard the term motivational driver as it refers to marketing? That's kind of interesting in kind of our audience here, because that's really funny. In free-to-play, motivational drivers are a very well-known term, because what motivational drivers tend to describe is, how do I get people to spend? What's the motivation behind that? And so there's lots of motivational drivers, and it's kind of funny, you could kind of go back to that old marketing, that kind of, it's like a sales example or like a teaching tool, but it's used in like lectures, the whole sell me a pen, sell me this pen. It kind of goes in line with that, but how do you get people to actually spend? And so they think about the motivation behind that. Well, players want to, they don't want to wait forever. Maybe they want to progress. Maybe you're putting actual pain points in there. The other popular one is gotcha mechanics, where rather than just buying an item straight up, people who want to collect stuff, they basically get a chest and you're going to get random loot in there. So you're going to get one of several different objects, but you don't actually pick what it is. So in order to level up or progress, or to get the most optimum build, you have to buy just a ton of those chests and keep repeatedly getting those things. So people are very in tune with those. But again, we don't have, when we're talking about game design, we don't have like our idea of motivational drivers. On the marketing side, we have those kinds of things. We're looking at why do people go and spend this money? Why do, what motivates people to, engage that way? And so I think there's kind of an analog that's kind of waiting to be discovered on the game design side, for the fun side, for the engaging side. All right, let's talk about cavemen. So there's this idea out there that exploration is fun because, 100,000 years ago or 10,000, maybe it's 30,000 years ago, a long time ago, we as cavemen were running around the jungle, and when we'd get lost, our brain would release dopamine, the happy feel-good drug, to help counteract the balances of counteract all the stress that we put on us, so that we wouldn't just roll into the fetal position and get attacked by like 1,000 tigers or something. The idea is that today, there he is, he's lost. Today, when you're sitting on your couch and you're playing these games, you get that release of dopamine without the stress of actually being lost. And so there's like this physiological reason that something is actually fun. Your brain is actually getting rewarded for going out and exploring without having that stress. And that kind of idea kind of creates what I call fun drivers. It kind of underlies fun drivers. So as I was, reading about this and digging into it, I was looking at a whole bunch of other games, especially on sites like Concrete and Newgrounds, and even starting in the mobile space, which started erupting in games. And I was starting to think about, well, maybe there's physiological or sociological or evolutionary reasons that these games are fun. Maybe, I can tie down to themes around those. And so I came up with a list of fun drivers. And I'm going to run through them. I have 8 of them, but they are not an exhaustive list. And so I think there's a lot more that could be out there. And they also could use even way more research on them. That's something that really interests me, especially when I think about meaningful play, that really interests me, and digging into these further on what actually is fun. I'm going to kind of move through them kind of fast because there's a lot of them. But if you have any questions about them, maybe ask afterwards or hit me up at any point and I can go into them a little bit more. But here's some of the fun drivers that I've come up with. One is exploration. And exploration, as I described with the caveman, is fun because, we think it's fun because we get that dopamine release without the stresses of actually being lost. But exploration doesn't mean just walking around an open world like No Man's Sky. It can also mean just any time we're experiencing new content in a game. Another one is novelty and surprise. This one kind of ties in exploration. I think it kind of describes somewhat political games that come out this political season, or I don't know if you guys ever played or heard of the game, You Have to Cut the Rope. There's a game, go play it because it's hilarious, it'll only take you about 10 minutes, but the whole game starts out and it says, the game's called You Have to Cut the Rope. You go in and on the screen it's like, in this next room there's a giant monster and you're going to have to cut the rope. And you go in there, and you can like throw axes and like jump, and you shoot fireballs, and you get in there, and none of them are any good against the enemy. But above him is a giant chandelier, and all you have to do is go up there and cut the rope. And if you cut the rope, it then goes into like a 10-minute song about how you vanquish the enemy by cutting the rope, and how you're the greatest ever. And it got phenomenal ratings, it got phenomenally, just a huge number of plays, all kinds of success. And it was really fun for, that short time. Creation, this one is kind of self-explanatory. We've talked about it. I've already seen some people talk about it, but it's not just creation, but creative expression. It's important, really important to our mental health for sure. And we see it in all kinds of games. Collection, almost every mobile game has collection at some point. That collection at some level through either achievements or items or whatever. If you've ever watched Hoarders, you know that it's like built into us to hoard stuff and collect stuff. This one is, I call it impact, this cause and effect. The best way to describe this, and this is like, it's really interesting because a lot of these, I noticed that my children like develop them really early on. And the best way to describe this is just knocking over a tower of blocks. It's fun. Even as an adult, I forgot how much fun just knocking over a tower of blocks is. In video games, you have some actual literal analogs of that, which is like Angry Birds. But it actually goes beyond that. It's anytime you're actually impacting the world or actually exerting influence over the world. So it could be StarCraft placing a number of units, then they go off and burn a whole bunch, another village down. Or it could be tower defense games where you place one tower and it, eventually you have all kinds of towers, shooting all kinds of enemies everywhere. So it's a lot more than just knocking blocks. There's a lot of different forms of this. Launcher games like Hedgehog Launch, that's a form of it. Or where you build up chain reactions. Anytime we build up a chain reaction, it would be a form of this. Personal growth, or a sense of progress, is built into us. We like to see that we are farther along than where we were before, that we're making some kind of level of progress. So RPGs are probably the most obvious example, but even games like Clash of Clans, these are building out your city. That's part of the fun of it, is that you can look at a screenshot now, and I can look at a screenshot of when I first started, and it's clear that I've gone way farther. I feel more powerful, because there's a sense of progress. Achievement, this is solving puzzles. So I can define it as strictly personal achievement. So by myself, it's like solving a puzzle or solving some kind of challenge. We get rewarded for that. We get rewarded for competitive victory. It feels great, but there's a flip side to this. Competitive defeat feels awful. It's not fun. Any of you guys play Clash Royale? I'm a big Clash Royale player, and I know many people, and in Clash Royale you battle other people, real people, and constantly people are flipping the table and getting upset at that game, because losing is not fun. Winning is. So all of these I collectively describe as fun drivers. And as I said, it's not a collective list. It's not the exhaustive list. There are some things that are kind of on there. I've been on the fence about some things like, social experiences, although, that are kind of rewarding in themselves, but I'm not still like on the fence where that would actually be like what I would describe as a fun driver, like we're actually just getting rewarded just for having conversations. The other thing is sparkles. We're like super drawn to sparkles, and they believe that the reason we're drawn to sparkles is that in nature, the only place you'd actually see sparkles is a reflection of sunlight off of water. But if you go to a casino, just go to a casino and just look around the slot machines and you'll see sparkles everywhere. And we're basically birds, we're animals, we can't help ourselves. But I don't think that's the exact same thing as some of the others, so I'm kind of on the fence then. All four of these things together create the fundamental pyramid. This is my model of, my internal model of how I go about creating games. And the big thing that it does is by kind of anchoring these things on each other, by anchoring game mechanics to fun drivers, as I start to iterate, I make sure that I'm designing game mechanics that are anchored in something that is actually, that is built into us and how you reward people and how we're rewarded either through dopamine or whatever, through different cycles or natural cycles to the player. I know that I'm developing features that are much higher chance of being grounded in something fun and engaging. Another way of saying this, these concepts can be used as a foundation for building fun games, as these concepts are fundamentally core to how we as human beings experience delight. So I guess my second point would be there are expert explanations for why things are fun. And rather than just kind of shrugging our shoulders and being like, we'll know it when we see it, maybe there's more we can do there. Maybe we can come up with more tools or do more research. It's worth researching these things so that we can anchor those things in fun. With marketing all those things, other people, we dig into it. I feel like there's still a big gap on the fun side. All right, so we've discussed a little bit what the fundamental pyramid is. On the next part, I want to kind of go into a little more how you can use it and a little more of the details behind it. So we have our 4 layers here, and fun drivers, we just talked about these. These are the things that are, they're built-in just drives that are rooted in biological, psychological forms or causes that kind of form our foundation for building fun games. Our game mechanics are how we exploit the fun drivers. It's how we build mechanics to actually take advantage of those. And rather than just making game mechanics based off of other games that we take or just guesses, basing those off of fun drivers will give us that kind of anchoring and make sure that we're exploiting the right things. The fun drivers can basically be our razor for determining whether we keep iterating on a feature or we decide to cut it. Flow controllers and filter, they're how we filter the game mechanics to keep difficulty matched against skill, to keep the player in the flow state. And then theme is how we present to the player and what the game looks like and the content itself. And some of those fun drivers actually tie directly into the theme. For example, Expiration ties directly into the theme because if you decide you want to make Expiration your fun driver, you've got to have a lot of content. So that's why we have a lot of procedural stuff, or you can share content among players. Those are some of the concerns. So what fun drivers you choose to exploit can really dictate just the scope of what your game would be. So as I'm kind of challenging myself, as I was working on this, I'm kind of challenging myself on what, about the fundamental pyramid and whether I think it's a good tool. I was thinking about what are the consequences if you fail at any one of these levels. If you fail with the fun drivers, which is the most common because a lot of us don't think about it in that terms, or certainly many companies out there are not, your game may work, but it's going to be work. It's not going to be fun. It's going to suffer from poor engagement and reviews. It's going to, maybe it feels like a grind, or I don't know, it's just not going to be fun. Without good game mechanics, the fun drivers won't be properly exploited. Your players won't be able to be properly rewarded for doing things that you think would be fun, and they may just get frustrated. It could be, poor UX, or all those different things could go into that, or just the actual mechanics themselves. With poor flow controllers, people just get frustrated and flip the table. They're either more likely that it's just way too hard, or it's just or it's too easy and it's boring. And then theme is, if you have a bad theme, it can affect your ability to actually market your game and get it out and get players in the game in the first place. Also, you may be missing out on an opportunity to exploit Expiration as just part of it. So all of these things are important, but I set it up as a pyramid because there's an actual relationship between them. Each one is building on the other below it. What's common is that a lot of companies don't understand the bottom 3 layers, so they just copy the top layer. They just move it between. You just move the theme from one to another. And as an actual, very practical business thing, a lot of studios, when they have a really successful game, they do reskins, which is really popular, especially in mobile space. It's becoming more and more prevalent. We started playing a game kind of recently, so me and my friends, whereas when a game comes out and you're like, this looks like it's just like, pick mobile game X, we first have to go and dig in and see if it was actually made by the same actual publisher, the actual developer who published the first game, because now there's more and more reskins coming out. Conversely, I see this more prevalent among indie developers, but there are people who focus way too much on the mechanics and game mechanics, and they're like, games are all about great game mechanics, but they ignore the top 2. And they end up making something that's not distinguished and not going to stand out, or the difficulty is way off. So you can't just look at one particular layer and say, that's the most important layer, I'm not going to focus on the others. Amazingly, in almost all of them, we ignore the fun drivers, and that's the key to all this. one thing that's kind of interesting is that even people who don't think about fun drivers or think about the fundamental, people don't know about the fundamental pyramid and all that. But one thing that's really interesting is that the people who I've known in my life who are like great developers, one of them is John Cooney, who now currently works at Concrete. He was one of the leading pioneers of Flash games who's made like 110 games or something, and a whole bunch of them are huge successes. They might not know about it, but they're intuitively aware of those things. They're intuitively aware of fun drivers. They know what's kind of fun, even if they didn't have a formal paradigm for thinking about it. And so they're really good at knowing what's fun, and they know how to exploit that. So now I want to talk about a case example. Who here is aware of bubble tanks? I assume everyone, because it's a game I made. I see like 3 hands go up. So because I only have 3 people that are very aware of this, I'm going to kind of move through it kind of fast, and then we can go through some other examples that you guys might be more aware of. So bubble tanks, it's kind of hard to see the screenshots up there, but bubble tanks is a really popular game that Your Interactive made, where basically you're a little bubble tank, and you move around between these giant arenas called bubble fields. And as you move around, you shoot up other little bubble tanks, and when they pop and you kill them, they release bubbles, and as you collect them, you actually grow and evolve your tank. And every bubble actually slowly changes the look of your tank. And as you get enough, you get to unlock new abilities and new things. It did very well. It won 2008 Bubble Tanks 2 won Best Shooter Game of the Year award in Flash games, and there were 9,000 games across 11 categories. To give you a sense of the competition, it got over 100 million plays, and it was a huge success for us. So in this example, the fun drivers of this game would be exploration and personal growth. As you move from bubble field to bubble field, you're exploring and seeing new enemies. In Bubble Tanks 3, we even allowed players to create their own tanks, and they would actually go out and scream in tanks that people had made into your game in the background. And then personal growth is the other big one. You're always looking better. You're always feeling more powerful, the sense of like, wow, I can look at where I am now and where I was before, and I can do way more things, and I just look stronger and feel stronger. The game mechanics, I already spoke about those. Traveling from bubble field to bubble field, shooting tanks, and growing your tank, evolving. The flow controllers kind of were really inspired and taken from the game Flow that I mentioned. So in bubble tanks, you can subconsciously control the difficulty in 2 ways. One is, the farther out, your main bubble field was in the center, and the farther out you went from that, the more difficult enemies were going to be. So you could decide to spiral around and move in that kind of way, which would give you a really long tail, so that you'd be able to grow lots before you go and fight those strong enemies. Or, if you were just awesome at it, you could just go shoot out as far as you could right off the bat. And the second thing is that you could choose to fight when you came into a bubble field, or flight. And one of the interesting things is, I put one of the final bosses actually just right next to your starting point. So right at the earliest beginning of the game, you could run into one of the final bosses and decide to fight him. I mean, overwhelmingly, the obvious choice has been like, oh shit, peace out, and you get out of there. But you could, if you were confident and you play the game a lot, you could fight him, and if you defeated him, you would go up like 3 or 4 evolution levels all immediately, and it would give you a great reward. But those kinds of, that kind of subconscious stuff really allows you to tune the difficulty as you play. And you could be at the right difficulty now, but this kind of makes sure that you'll always be at the right difficulty, where skill is always matched to challenge. And then the theme is obviously bubbles, it's blue, but it was very differentiating. There was nothing out there like bubble tanks, and even though it had a simple art style that looked nice and crisp, it's chill and relaxing. And the nice thing is, because it was all circles, we could make lots of art. Make lots of art fast. So I'm going to insert audience participation here. I have some examples, but are there any games that you guys would like to run through as far as how the fundamental pyramid could apply to that? Hopefully I'm aware of that game. It's pretty quiet. I'm just getting blank expressions coming back here. Yeah.
Are you just looking for?
Is there a particular game that
Firewatch.
Gosh, I haven't played Firewatch. Damn. Well, what kind of game is Firewatch? I know a little bit about it. Is it a game where you go and explore a world, right? Do you build things in that game? Because I know there's a number of those that are like that.
You build tasks you do. There's a heavy backstory.
Okay. Well, it seems to me like Expiration would be really, obviously, a big part of it. Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't played it, so it's hard for me to go into real detail here. I guess, huh?
Star Wars Galaxy Heroes.
Galaxy of Heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, you guys are gonna like get me on a whole bunch of these games. All right, no more submitting game ideas to me. I'm gonna use the list that's right here that I know. Okay. But take Clash of Clans. In Clash of Clans, our foundation. Most of you guys familiar with Clash of Clans? Huge success, a huge mobile game. So Clash of Clans, your fun drivers would be that sense of progress, and it would also be that cause and effect of being able to drop down a whole bunch of units. It's the same thing as knocking over blocks, where you drop down lots of units and you just watch them destroy another person's base. Your game mechanics are basically, as I just described, basically you build up your base and you can attack other people's bases. Your flow controller there, though, would be matchmaking. And that's kind of an interesting one because on those games, matchmaking, it's kind of iffy on whether it's actually a good flow controller because it was very frustrating. And the other thing is that it was very game because it was based on medals, how many medals you had, or I believe it was medals, not trophies. And so you'd be matched to other people that had the same medals as you, and you could game the system by purposely losing a whole bunch of matches, then going down in level and rank, really. But there was no real cost to that because then you get to fight people that would just destroy and take all their stuff. So it was very frustrating. Oh, and the other thing, I guess, with Clash of Clans' other fun driver is competitive victory. So for the other half of the people, they were having competitive loss, and that was very not fun. And so a lot of people rage quit over that. And then your theme, obviously, is that really, kind of cartoonish style is really polished and refined. Another one I actually do want to talk about just real quick is Angry Birds. So Angry Birds has achievement, it has the cause and effect of knocking over blocks and stuff. But what I want to get to is talking about the theme for there is kind of interesting, is that with Angry Birds, it's actually based on a game that one of my friends made. Called Crush the Castle. And it's the exact same mechanic. They made it before Angry Birds. Angry Birds clearly copied the game verbatim. But Crush the Castle had very realistic, knights and soldiers in their castle, and it had very, solid textures. It looked dark and grisly, the world. And then when Angry Birds came in, they changed out the theme and made it bright and colorful and made it really casual, and it felt really inviting and really fun to get into. And that was just a theme switch. So that's a good example where you can have still the same fun drivers, but changing the theme really opened it up to the audience, and a lot more people enjoyed it. Everybody who played it had fun, but a lot of people didn't want to play a dark, grisly world game. My grandma's not going to get into that. My wife's not going to get into that, where she loves Angry Birds. So I guess I want to kind of close out with let's make a game. So think about, as you're kind of going through these things, I imagine all of us always have game ideas in our heads. We're always thinking about ideas. As you do it, my advice would be first consider your fun drivers. What is the thing that I'm actually exploiting? What is the thing that's actually going to make this fun? Then as you do that, think about how do you exploit them? And then use those fun drivers as your razor for what features, what game mechanics you're going to keep, or what game mechanics you're going to kick out of your game. How do you maintain flow? So on top of that, how are you going to tweak those game mechanics to make sure that the player's skill matches with the challenges that they have? And I came up with, I had mentioned being able to, the location being one way that you can subconsciously allow the player to subconsciously choose their difficulty. But I have some other ones here that I've come up with. One is time. So being able to speed up enemies coming in, that would be an example where, I could make it harder. For example, another popular game that I love is Kingdom Rush. In Kingdom Rush, it's a tower defense game, but you can send advanced waves of enemies to come and fight you. When you do that, you get rewarded with extra gold and extra points. If you're not comfortable, you can just let the full timer go before they come in. But if you are really good at the game, you can speed up and you're going to get better points and be able to get more gold, so you'll be able to build up better defenses and do a lot better in the game. Another one is gates, so you can open or close gates that might allow enemies to come in, or allow whatever the challenge is to scale up. And then the fourth thing is alliances. And I describe this as every 4X like strategy game that I play, where it's like, you form an alliance with that guy you really want to conquer, but you can't yet. And you're like, yeah, we're the best of friends in the game, and yeah, let me help you. And as soon as you get just a little stronger, you're like, immediately declare war. All my guys are stationed around his base, and they all immediately attack and take all his stuff. But that's a form of controlling the difficulty by my alliance with him. And this is an AI player, but controlling the difficulty by keeping that friendship until I'm ready to actually take on the challenge of actually fighting him. And then the fourth thing is, think about what theme will attract players, or let you leverage other fun drivers, or differentiate your product. I'm losing my voice progressively more and more as I talk. I can feel it. All right, so let's recap. My first point, our current tools and methodologies for designing fun and engaging games is disturbingly lacking. I think we could do a lot more there, and it's worth investing in that because it's costing lots of money iterating features that don't work or games that don't work. And a lot of games, if you look at the mobile store, the app store, or look at these places, a lot of games aren't working. The second thing is, there are explanations for why things are fun, and it's worth investigating them and trying to find out what the underlying cause is. And then the third thing is that I really think this fundamental pyramid is a tool that you can use to build on the fun drivers and provide some focus, giving you some confidence in what features you're iterating on are actually going to be fun and engaging in the end. So that is it. With that is it. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take a shot at answering them.